Welcome one, welcome all. It is Tuesday, September 12th, 2023, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. Because it is a Tuesday, because it is 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, we are live on 3 different places for the latest edition of the Blogging the Boys Roundtable, the B2B Roundtable as we like to call it. You can watch this show live on the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel, the Blogging the Boys Facebook page, or the new Blogging the Boys Twitch channel. If you don't watch it live, well, what the hell? But you can always watch it at your own convenience. All these platforms have rewatchability. You can also listen to this at your own convenience on the Blogging the Boys podcast network. If you do listen or watch or whatever, you will see, hear, read myself and all of these fine gentlemen all throughout the Blogging the Boys universe throughout a given week, because that's what we live to do, is to talk about the Dallas Cowboys. I say we, my name is RJ Ochoa. With me tonight, 3 horsemen to make us 4. The first one, we're going to go in chronological order as we always do, so apologies to the podcast audience. Chris Halling, straight from the concrete jungle where dreams are made of. Chris, it's been a while since you were on a roundtable. You were itching to get back here last week, acting all offended that you didn't sign up for one. So it feels like you made a bit of a straw man argument that you're here to defend.
Oh, no, I wasn't offended. I was just reminding Tony, he has a little win streak of his own right now. He's got 3 straight wins, but I also have 3 straight wins. It's just been based off my appearances. Just been really busy, moving and all that. But, I'm back, and one of those streaks is going to have to come to an end tonight.
We do have 2 3-game or 3 roundtable winning streaks on the line. As you mentioned, Chris, yours is a little bit more kind of haphazard given everything going on. Tony, you have won the actual last 3 roundtables in a row. And if I'm not mistaken, because I've seen you for those 3 weeks, you have a brand new desk chair that you're sitting in. So is that going to give you some luck? Is that a throne that you went out and got? Are you a Colorado Buffalo in kind of a turnover throne situation here?
Yeah, I won 3 in a row, and I'm like, I think I need to renegotiate my contract. So I got a new chair, and here we are.
Did you put it together yourself?
I did.
Okay, well, congratulations. Things like that always make you feel manly. So good
Absolutely.
for you, Tony Catalina. With us here tonight also is David Howman. Howman, you are obsessed with pumpkin. We are not in October yet. I hate to tell you, you are the person. We should start really calling you Hobby Lobby, because you put up the Christmas stuff like in June. So that's kind of how you are living and operating when it comes to pumpkin this particular fall season.
Yeah, and it just relates to the pumpkin. I don't put my Christmas stuff up until well into December. The pumpkin is the only thing I go crazy for, so I keep it to just one device.
Okay. Well, it is a fun time to be a Dallas Cowboys fan, as we all know full well. We appreciate those of you who are hanging out in the comments waiting for us to start. Let's see here. Let's get to some of these comments. Rex Morgan says, we can trust this team only in mid-February after they haven't let us down. Kevin says that rumor has it Giants fans are still crying. Big Bert, Tony Catalina, you were at the game. Big Bert says, wonder how many Giants jerseys littered the stands after that game. Let's see here. Watsamata says, what's up, Cowboys fans? Charles says, just working away, waiting for the show. I'm in Kansas. I think that's Kansas, right? KS, right? I think I got my state abbreviations right. Thank y'all for having my back there. John Wick makes me sweaty. Hey, whatever your cup of tea is, says, how about them Cowboys? Let's see here. Kevin just says Rick. Rick says working. That's what's going on here. We had quite the chat going on here. Kevin has offered the first points of the evening from the crowd to Chris Halling. Says 5 points to Chris because he warned it. You did kind of call your shot, Chris. So you are out to the early lead here. In fact, let's get a look at our standings as we start tonight's roundtable. We have a lot to get to, obviously, after 40-0. Chris Halling out to a 5-point lead. How does that feel, Chris? You called your shot. You're kind of living it out right now.
It feels really good, but that lead looks like it'll be short-lived, because a couple comments down, Tony got some points as well. So
wow, what a man of honor. I didn't see Tony lost a point.
But then he gained 5. So actually he's at 4.
So Brian lost a point. Tony lost a point because you were late again. Tony wasn't late.
Usually I'm in the top right, and then when I'm late, I'm not in the top right.
Okay,
so.
That's a great call. That's a great sign of a hardcore BTB fan. But John Wick makes me sweaty did give Tony 5 points for being the person to bear down of the New York not so good at football Giants. That's right. So Tony, you've got 4 points. Howman, no. Oh, and Tony, you picked up 5 from Jeff. On Watsamata gave you 5. Tony. So we've got Tony at 9, Howman at 5. It's obviously going to be a long night for me here on the keyboard. So gentlemen, let's go ahead and start it. We haven't had any show on the podcast network talk about this. Our most recent show in our feed was the latest episode of the Writer's Block, which Howman, you were on. Chris, you couldn't make it, but that show does feature Howman, Chris, Brandon Clements, and Brandon Laurie every single Tuesday morning. And Howman, you guys were recording and finished recording right before the Aaron Rodgers injury happened on Monday Night Football. Obviously, it's been over 24 hours since that happened. The whole NFL world now obviously knows Aaron Rodgers has a torn Achilles. He will miss the rest of the season, which means the Dallas Cowboys will not see him. I think I speak for all of us in saying this is awful. This is horrible. You don't wish injuries on anybody. Aaron Rodgers has tormented all of us in a football sense. But again, nobody wants to see this. And I think we all wanted to see this talented defense go up against him and get their hopeful first win ever against him in the building, because that has never happened. But it will not be the case. Howman, the Cowboys opened as 3-point favorites against the Jets. That climbed to 7.5 and most recently to 9.5. Do you feel like this all of a sudden became an easy game for the Cowboys?
Yeah, I think it really has dramatically altered what kind of matchup we're going to be seeing next week. But there's also that part of me that, just kind of feels like, we've seen this happen before in other Cowboys eras where, you go up against a quarterback, whether it's, Colt McCoy, John Beck, Jeff Driscoll, like you pick some random quarterback that isn't really a starting caliber, and then they just end up having a great game against the Cowboys because of course they do. So I'm not necessarily writing a W in the column just yet, but I mean, going from Aaron Rodgers to Zach Wilson, especially when they have a short turnaround to come and play one less day of prep to play the Cowboys and traveling to Dallas, definitely helps the Cowboys. It's definitely advantageous for them.
Tony Catalina, Kevin says in the comments, this game just became a trap game. The Jets really did kind of have this magic energy. The discourse online throughout Monday Night Football was I think everyone was really kind of rooting for the Jets, like just because of the horrific nature of it all. And I think everyone was almost kind of trying to tear down Josh Allen, at least Cowboys fans were, to kind of have everybody realize that, quarterbacks are fallible and nobody is impervious, and Dak Prescott should not be held to this ridiculous standard. But that being the case, Tony, they are 1-0, and they do have a little bit of nobody believes in us magic going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anytime you lose a guy like Aaron Rodgers, a player of that caliber, it's going to change the perception of what the season's going to look like. I don't think anybody's, outlandish for making that statement. On the other hand, their defense is a legitimate defense. So that was always going to be a problem for this Cowboys offense. And I always thought that was going to be like the real test here. So, offensively, they got guys like Breece Hall who look really good coming off injury. Dalvin Cook is Dalvin Cook. So they have some ways to beat you. And I know it's Zach Wilson, and I know they didn't let him throw the ball further than 5 yards downfield. But, at the end of the day, this is a team that I wouldn't say trap game. Like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like the Cowboys shouldn't win this game. And, I wouldn't be surprised if it was, double-digit points easily. But it's a game and an opponent that, I wouldn't take lightly, right? Because this defense can keep the team in the game. And, I think I'm having mutual respect or just showing respect for an NFL opponent that has some talent. But yeah, the Aaron Rodgers side of things definitely changes the dynamic here.
Chris, I did a live stream in the Bleacher Report app on Monday, and I'll be doing another one on Wednesday. But I asked people, I said, do you feel, this was obviously before the injury, do you feel more confident about the Jets game than you did before Sunday night? And of course, everybody said yes, given what we saw. So do you feel more confident in this game now? Or are you doing everything you can to commit to, just tunnel vision? I don't want to look ahead, because we've all seen the Cowboys be really successful as a team, and it all fall apart at the worst possible moment. So I do think that has helped everyone stay grounded, but it is hard to not let your mind run away from yourself given the circumstances.
Yeah, well, I came into the season thinking that they would, get this win even if they did have Aaron Rodgers. But I do think that it's definitely going to be a little bit easier now not having Aaron Rodgers there. But, as Tony was saying, that threat of their defense hasn't gone away. They have a tremendous defense with Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed. Jordan Whitehead had 3 interceptions last night alone. And then you have Quinnen Williams up there in the middle, and he could give our interior offensive line lots of problems throughout the game. So, defensively, I think we're going to be able to get a lot of pressure on Zach Wilson. And I think that would have been the case even if Aaron Rodgers had been there, because that offensive line was not doing a great job of protecting whoever was lined up, in that pocket. So I think that the key is going to be really how we control the ball in offense. We can't commit too many turnovers. We're really going to have to control the pace of the game and just not shoot ourselves in the own, not shoot our own foot. So if we can just stay out of our own way, play the same kind of defense that we did, against the Giants, and, not make mistakes, this should be a win for the Cowboys either way. But, it does kind of give the feeling of, don't like underestimate this team, because they're still very talented.
Howman, I don't know that anybody was ready to riot about Tyler Smith not playing. And some of that was that the writing was on the wall last week. But in the moment, you handle our inactives list at blogoftheboys.com. So you had the article ready to go on Sunday night. I think we're all sitting here saying, like, great job. It worked out. You know what I mean? Like, Chuma Edoga was awesome. And you got Tyler Smith ready for the bigger threat in terms of the better interior pass rush and what the New York Jets have to offer. So the Cowboys kind of, played this whole thing right. I think they deserve a little bit of attaboys here.
Yeah, I think we've seen that been the case with Mike McCarthy since he showed up too. Is he's done a really good job of kind of like weighing the risk when it comes to these injuries and knowing like, well, if they're kind of borderline, like we don't want to make them play this week and potentially risk them getting aggravating or getting hurt even more. But then at the same time, sometimes it's he takes kind of the approach of, well, this is like a really big game, we really need him. But he knew again against the Giants, they had the talent and they trusted Chuma Edoga to be able to hold up, especially playing between Tyron Smith, who looks like he is fully back, and also playing between Tyler Biadasz, who a year ago made his first Pro Bowl and is really coming into his own. So I think they really deserve a lot of props for how they handled it. And now they're kind of, they're in a good position with that offensive line of one, feeling confident in Edoga, but also getting Tyler Smith back. And you're going to need a big dude like that going against Quinnen Williams.
Quickly, Chris, you were talking about this on our Slack channel. The Cincinnati Bengals released La'el Collins from the PUP list. Obviously, La'el has a history with the Cowboys. You weren't passionate about like, let's do this, but you were just like, hey, like opening the door for conversation. I don't think any of like, the Cowboys seem to have moved on from La'el. It didn't seem like they felt like they could trust him at the very end. And that decision, to Chris's point, or to Howman's point, has aged really well for the Cowboys. And Terrence Steele obviously got the bag, whatever. But that does offer a potential point of interior depth if the Cowboys did want to explore that, given that La'el has played left guard for the Cowboys in the past.
Yeah, exactly. I wasn't pounding the table for him. It's not something that I'll be devastated if we, don't get. It's not the same as me trying to push for DeAndre Hopkins. I'm not that passionate about it, but it's something I would welcome. I wouldn't be against it. There's all sorts of, personal, some sour, feelings and emotions there. So I don't see it happening. I think the Cowboys would rather just keep rocking with Edoga and then, seeing what they have maybe in TJ Bass. So, it's not something that I'm predicting will happen. I'm not, crossing my fingers for it, but he played really well as a guard in Dallas. I actually think his more dominant play came as a guard, and I think that he could still, make an impact coming off the bench if that's what they chose. At the end of the day, I think that you can always take as much offensive line depth as possible, especially in a league where, especially in a league where injuries happen so often. So, I wouldn't be against having a veteran like him on the team, but it's not something I'm holding my breath for or pounding the table for.
Tony, last thing before we move on to our next topic here. Melissa Cuellar offered, in the chat, the crowd will be the X factor. Now, I think we can all admit, and I'm not saying this is anybody that's watching or that will watch or that will listen or that is in any, one of our circles, and every Blog on the Boys user is in our circle. The Cowboys have some front runner sort of fans, Tony, and coming off of a 40-0 win, I could totally see like a rush to kind of go, beat your chest at AT&T Stadium in the home opener. I do anticipate that this is going to be a raucous crowd because they have a reason to be. And generally speaking, when they don't, it's not exactly one of the more, powerful home field advantages in the NFL.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head there. Like coming off a 40-0 win, everyone's feeling themselves and 1-0. And, as we talk about it, it's sad that Aaron Rodgers isn't playing. But as a fan, you're sitting here saying, like, I can go to AT&T Stadium against this hyped up Jets team and we're expected to win. It'd be a shock if we didn't win. They can go out there with that mentality, like, okay, we're going to go see a victory. And it could be a recipe for pandemonium in that stadium. So I hear you with that.
Jay Recruiter says, I will be there and I am not a front runner. LOL. I said you weren't, Jay Recruiter. I said nobody here was a front runner. I'm talking about people who aren't even here. All right. No exact fingers pointed here by me. Brian, think of it. The super chat says, we will find out what our rush defense looks like this week. A lot of dual Hankins, Mozzie fronts, extra linebackers. How worried are you about this? Howman, I'll throw this question to you. Mozzie Smith did not play, or I should say Jonathan Hankins did not play a lot more than Mozzie Smith in the opener. Didn't really feel that way. Mozzie kind of robbed of a sack as far as the box score was concerned. A lot of Cowboys were. Are you at all concerned here? I mean, given everything involved with the Jets?
Not really. I think, in week one, to your point, Hankins, he only played one more snap than Mozzie. The both of them were not used that much, and part of that I think is just because, the Giants were pretty much from the beginning, they were throwing the ball on every down, trying to get back into it, because that's just how badly they were beat. So it's not like the Cowboys were running out there run stuffing defensive tackles that much. Going to be a very different story against the Jets. Obviously, probably would have been even with Aaron Rodgers there, but now that Zach Wilson is a quarterback, they're definitely going to be running the ball more. They're going to be trying to get some penetration there in the middle, and so you're going to see probably a lot more Hankins, a lot more Mozzie Smith. I think from the little bit that we saw of those two, and again, it wasn't a whole lot, but I mean, I thought they looked good, both of them. You know, they had some good penetration, they had some good run stuffs, but just not a whole lot of actual opportunities. So I'm not really too worried about that. Granted, we haven't really seen a whole lot yet. So, you know, maybe a week from now, I'm saying, yeah, I'm kind of worried about it. But right now, I'm not too worried about it.
An update on the score at this point. Chris Halling has 20 points, Tony 15, Howman 17. Some of these come from me as your super independent and objective host. A lot of them come from the crowd, obviously. So I can't tell you exactly what comes from who, but just know this is the total tabulation at this particular point in time. Chris, you did receive some extra points because you were the only one who asked in our group chat earlier today. You said, hey, what's the theme of tonight's show? Tony and Howman were really lazy is really, what I'm kind of saying indirectly, but
I think we just implicitly trust your judgment at this point.
You know what, Howman? That's
that's
listen, the way to go. Howman understands how to play this game.
It's not about not trudging. It's not about not trusting your judgment, RJ. I just, I was trying to get my homework done and be prepared. When you come into a game, you watch film beforehand, right? Unless you're Johnny Manziel and don't take it seriously. So,
look,
I just, I take this seriously.
I don't make the rules. I just abide by them and make sure that all of us do. So that being said, this is kind of an essay question. I said that because I wanted the crowd to know I didn't prep these dudes. So they're all coming in with just, kind of off the cuff stuff, which is why they're so great at what they do. But a lot of positive vibes. All right. And I think we're all scared of that. We all have been burned in the past. But the question that I'd like each of you to answer, Chris Halling, you can go first. Should Cowboys fans be feeling as confident as they have been since Sunday night? That's the nice way to put this. The mean way is to say, should Cowboys fans shut the hell up and realize it's only been 1 week and that even though you won 40-0, it only counts as 1 win. It doesn't count any more than any other team winning a game in the NFL last week.
I think the Cowboys fans have every right to be really excited with what they saw. I mean, that's the most dominant performance on defense that I've seen, probably my entire life. And, I know my life hasn't been that long, but, still that's, it's a pretty good amount of seasons. And I don't want people to suddenly act like the Giants were scrubs. Like, they made the playoffs last year and they added some real, depth players and talented pieces that had a lot of people actually picking the Giants to upset the Cowboys on Sunday night. So, it's not like we just had like a little walk in the park there. And I think it's important to know also that we're going to get guys back as well from injury. Like we won that game without Tyler Smith. We won that game without Donovan Wilson. I mean, we're going to be getting guys back to make this team even better. So I think until the Cowboys really show that, their defense isn't the best in the NFL, I think Cowboys fans should have every reason to be excited about, the trajectory of this team this season.
Now, Brian calling me out. I did have the Cowboys #1 in my power rankings today at blogontheboys.com, but that's why I'm asking the question. Like, I'm asking if I am part of the problem here, Tony Catalina. Like, should we kind of be checking ourselves? There's a lot of people. Tuesday is power rankings day across the NFL who had the 49ers ahead of Dallas. I think we can all, agree with that. I just had Dallas ranked ahead of them last week. So, it's kind of painted into a corner. Some people still had Cincinnati ahead of Dallas, Tony. Some people still had Philadelphia ahead of Dallas, Kansas City, despite the fact that they lost. And you can't completely play won and lost after 1 week in the NFL. But still, there are a lot of people who are singing their songs.
Well, yeah, I mean, you come off of a 40-0 performance. It's hard not to feel that type of way because when you look at it very just pragmatically, right? It's hard to win in the NFL. It's hard to absolutely dominate someone in the NFL. And then it's harder to skunk somebody with a 0 in their own home. If you remember the game correctly, the Giants had some type of momentum in that first drive, right? They were moving the ball a little bit. They didn't really throw it, but they were able to run the ball. They got down to scoring range. Obviously, the block field goal changed the entire complexion in this game, but we can't act like, the Giants weren't a team that won a playoff game last year, went to a divisional round, one of the 4 best teams in the NFC. And just because it's the Cowboys, we're going to sit here and say, well, the Giants are frauds and this and that. So, yes, you can sit here. I think the Cowboys have an absolute, or fans, I should say, have an absolute reason to feel really good about it. And to me, you call me Chicken Little, you call me sometimes like I can be the optimistic and kind of go with the waves of the team. But I found myself in the middle of the game texting my brother, and he was like, is the Cowboys this good or the Giants this bad? And I actually said to him, I said, I think this might be the best team I can remember in my lifetime. And it didn't really resonate with me until I said that text where I'm like, nah, this might really be one of the best teams I've seen in my lifetime. Like, that's crazy. And I don't think it's outlandish, and there's gonna be ebbs and there's gonna be flows, and things are gonna look bad and they're gonna lose games. But at the end of the day, this team is real, and I think Cowboys fans, should enjoy what we have right now, and let's see what happens next week.
Howman, you and I are both big fans of Mike McCarthy, and this has kind of become a tradition, is for the Cowboys to blow a team out at some point every season under him. Last year was the Minnesota Vikings, obviously. The year before it was the Atlanta Falcons after they got blown out themselves against the Denver Broncos. Now, they followed up the blowout last year with a win, incidentally, against the Giants on Thanksgiving Day. But 2 years ago, after the Atlanta blowout, which was also a 40-point victory, the Cowboys lost in Kansas City. And we all went into that game thinking like, okay, they're going to go knock off Patrick Mahomes. It's going to happen, blah, blah, blah. And not only did they lose that game, but they lost the following week on Thanksgiving Day to the Raiders. So that is kind of lurking as well, which is why I think the question is fair.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a fair question, just because, like you said, we've seen this happen in the past with Mike McCarthy, where they have the huge win and then, it doesn't necessarily translate to the next week. And also, to me, I mean, I think, like, back to last year in this Giants team, everyone was hyping them up because they made the playoffs. Nobody expected them to go that far. But they were also, I mean, they were one of those teams like the Vikings. They were kind of fool's gold, where they won a lot of games that they really had no business winning. And, then once they got into the playoffs, they kind of got lucky because they faced the Vikings, the other really terrible playoff team, and they were able to beat them. But then they had to go up against a real team and they lost. And so, the whole time during the game, I kept telling myself, like, let's not get too carried away. Like, this is the Giants. Daniel Jones turned back into the Daniel Jones we all know that he was and still is. But at the same time, there's something to be said for the fact that it's hard to win. It's hard to win big. And, good teams blow out bad teams. And the Cowboys went and did exactly what they were supposed to do. And, all offseason, all we could talk about was, all this immense optimism, the Brandon Cooks trade, the Stephon Gilmore trade, getting a guy like Deuce Vaughn in the 6th round, a lot of the optimism hearing about, and then later seeing the Mike McCarthy offense and the Texas coast and how all the players love the new system. And then to see it all just kind of coalesce together in that first week and in such a, like, visceral way. Yeah, like, let's get excited. Let's have this week and just absolutely enjoy it. And then, I mean, next week, the Jets, obviously, it's not as tough as a matchup now, but that defense is still legit. They're really good. So you're going to get a really good test right away in week 2.
That's well said. Great answers from everyone. An update on our points. Chris, you're sitting at 30. Tony, Howman, you've closed the gap, both at 29. These are never easy. There's no 40-0 blowout wins on the Roundtable. It's tough. It's gritty. You got to fight tooth and nail. You got to claw with your fingernails for every single one of these inches. I like this question from Watsamata, which is maybe going to be answered over the course of the season. Chris, I'll throw it to you first since you're in the lead. This is, again, Watsamata's wording here. If the Giants stuck to the strategy from that first drive, would the Cowboys have stopped it? I say yes. And team scouting thinking they could run on the boys are going to be disappointed. That first drive, Chris, was really when the Cowboys looked the most vulnerable. And I shout out to, was it you, Howman, that wrote? Yeah, it was Howman that you wrote the 5 best plays. The Andrew Thomas false start really kind of ruined everything and wrecked everything. But before that, Chris, the Giants were kind of cooking, and it looked like Dallas was not going to be able to stop the run, and that last year's problem was going to ripple over into 2023.
Yeah, well, I think too you have to factor in what team you're going up against. I mean, the Giants have a great rushing quarterback in Daniel Jones, and if you try and contain that, then you're going to be kind of easing up that run defense and kind of having guys not clog up the middle as much to kind of keep him contained. So I don't think that that's necessarily going to be a problem every matchup. Like, I'm not worried about Zach Wilson rushing for like 40 yards against us next week. So, I think that that'll change. And also, it is the first drive of the season, and a lot of those defensive players didn't play at all in the preseason. So, it could just be some rust that it needed to be, kind of shed off a little bit. So I'm sure Dan Quinn would have gotten in his groove and fixed it pretty quickly. I really don't expect the run game to be a big problem for the Cowboys, especially not as big of a problem as it was last year.
Tony, you said on this week's episode of First and 10 that you were there in person watching it. You were kind of wondering, and that there was a Cowboys fan near you that you kind of looked at and said, they haven't really thrown a pass. Like, they must be so afraid of the secondary that they're not even tempting it, but that doesn't change the fact that they still had success on the ground.
Yeah, that was kind of my thought in the first drive, where I was like, okay, Daniel Jones didn't even attempt to throw the football. I know it's raining, but this isn't like monsoon conditions, like especially at that point in time, they were able to move the football. I think they just made a concerted effort to think, we're gonna ride the legs of Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, and to a degree in the first drive it worked. And to kind of Chris's point, and you wonder if teams are going to try that, right? You say like, okay, maybe next week. We know the Jets are going to try that with Dalvin Cook and Breece Hall. They're going to try to run the football, keep it out of Zach Wilson's hands, and see if they can be successful with that. Now, Jets' offensive line is leaky, right? It's not the best offensive line in the league. It has issues. But at first, I was just like, yeah, I don't know if this is the recipe. I thought we were seeing kind of a repeat of last year. I know there was question marks about Mozzie Smith, his development, Jonathan Hankins, what kind of impact is he going to have? But once the Cowboys became smothering and kind of got their bearings back and realized that I think 95% of these starters didn't take a preseason snap, you got to get into it. And once they got the rhythm rolling, the Cowboys were clearly the more superior football team.
Howman, I'm going to modify the question for you a little bit here. The phrase "they're zigging when everybody else is zagging" gets said all the time when it comes to roster construction in any sport. People say things like the run game is making a return and blah, 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 whatever. And, it's cyclical, the way rosters are built in the NFL. Something that all of us have said many times on the roundtables and across BTB. So there's a bit of an epidemic in the NFL when it comes to quality, really depth in the offensive lineman department. There is no team that really has 6-7 offensive linemen that they can trust. We certainly know that full well, though Chuma Edoga did a lot to kind of fight off that argument. But that being said, Howman, the Cowboys' greatest strength kind of lines up very well. It's like the Cowboys ordered like 10 tons of kryptonite and they're like going to fight an army of Supermen. You know what I'm saying? Like with regards to the NFL. So even if you have a quarterback that's mobile like Daniel Jones, it may not matter because most offensive lines, to use Tony's words, are a bit leaky.
Yeah. And I mean, you see this kind of pretty much, pick a team and you can find a weak spot on the offensive line, and you can find a situation where, if they lose one guy, then, they're in danger of the whole ship falling apart. And then you also factor in that now they have to block against Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, Dante Fowler, Dorrance Armstrong. And by the way, Osa Odigizua coming into his own and having a great first week. So it's kind of one of those situations where, even when the Cowboys last year, their run defense was not that good. Eventually an offense has to drop back and pass. Like, you can, unless you're the 49ers, you're not going to be able to just run your way down the field. You're going to have to drop back and pass. You're going to have to do it sometimes without play action. And those pass rushers are just going to pin their ears back and they're going to feast. So, obviously the Cowboys want to be better on the run defense. That's why they brought back Jonathan Hankins. That's why they invested their first round pick in Mozzie Smith. And hopefully they are better so far. The little bit we saw, like we said, they looked good. And it'll be a really good test against the Jets. But at the same time, if it's not, then, the downside is if every other offense is going to run the ball on you, they're going to have a fairly inefficient offense because they're not going to be able to score as quickly. And as long as your offense, with Mike McCarthy calling the plays and Dak Prescott trying to prove himself after all his interceptions last year, as long as they can keep together and they can keep scoring too, like there's not really going to be much of a choice for the opponent.
All very well said. Kudos to all of you. It's a tight race tonight. An update on the score. Chris, you've lost the lead momentarily, but again, anything can happen. Chris, Tony tied at 38. Howman in the lead. You picked up 5 points from the crowd, Howman, so good for you. You're the first to 40, so enjoy your burger at this point in time. I did want to address something. Kevin, you're great. We love you. But Kevin says -5 for everyone that said Tolbert was going to have all these catches and yards this week. On a plus side, he did have a special teams tackle. We've talked about a lot how the offense wasn't really asked to do anything. So, like, the fourth wide receiver wasn't going to get any real opportunity to kind of contribute. So let's just slow the roll with the Jalen Tolbert criticism. I think we're all still believers that his time will come. All right. Let's continue the good vibes, I suppose. Chris, true or false? The Dallas Cowboys will start 4-0. They're 1-0, which would mean, so this obviously, it would mean that they win their next 3 games. That's good math from me.
Yes.
So weeks 2 through 4 for the Cowboys, they have the Jets at home on Sunday. They visit the Arizona Cardinals next Sunday. And then after that, they will host the New England Patriots and Zeke Elliott, who I think we all thought looked a little bit better than anticipated on Sunday against the Eagles, certainly making it a closer game than it was for a good while. So true or false, Chris, given that you now know who the opponents are, the Dallas Cowboys will start 4-0.
True. And, that doesn't even change anything based off what I saw on Sunday. My preseason prediction was that that our first loss comes to the first matchup against the Eagles. I have us starting off really, really hot, and I think we're just going to keep riding that wave. And honestly, I want to apologize for saying that we'll go 14-3 because I don't think that was accurate. I think we're actually going to go 17-0 at this rate. So, I think we have plenty of ceiling, and who knows, we may have to rival, those that Dolphins team and that Patriots team with Tom Brady. So, I think the sky's the limit for this Cowboys team. And if I lose points for being confident, I lose points for being confident. But I'd rather be confident than, be worried about losses and all that. Until they lose, the Cowboys are not losing a game this season.
Until they lose, they're not losing a game.
Yep.
Game this season. Okay.
Yeah.
I respect the optimism, Chris. I'll leave it at that. Tony, do you agree that the Cowboys are going to start 4-0?
I do, but I also understand that there's some situations here that the Cowboys are going to have a chance to learn a little bit about themselves, right? This Jets defense, like I mentioned earlier, is still a real good defensive unit, probably one of the best in the league, if not the best. The Cardinals, the Cardinals, right? So we're going to handle that business. But as you look at and move forward, the Patriots, the Cowboys are better in most every category. But what's interesting about the Patriots is the Bill Belichick dynamic, where the Cowboys will go into that game. They'll probably still win the game, but it'll be a little bit of a struggle. And I think that'll be really valuable for the team moving forward because Bill Belichick and that staff is going to uncover some type of weakness. They're going to try to attack something that is perceived across the league. And the Cowboys, in a win, will learn a lesson. Okay, maybe we got this to work on. Maybe we got to tighten this up. So long answer, yes, we're going to win. They're going to go 4-0, but I think the games will probably be a little scrappier than, they probably should be.
What was the expression you used on 1st and 10? Lessons in victory, or what was it?
Yeah, I'd rather learn a lesson in victory than, and then a loss. Like I'm paraphrasing myself poorly there, but yeah, I'd rather learn a lesson than a win.
It's a difficult thing to do. I would offer, when I heard you say that, I was going to tell you this, so this worked out well. Brandon Gouton, who runs Bleeding Green Nation, SB Nation's Philadelphia Eagles site, he has a term he coined, a moral loss. We all know what a moral win is, like when a team loses, but you kind of feel like they showed a lot of promise, whatever. A moral loss. You get the win, but you also get the moral, where you feel like you lost, but at no actual consequence to you. So that's kind of what I think you're projecting or predicting at some point in the next month. So we got there. We landed the plane. Howman, we had a comment here. Let's see here from Justin that says we'll be 5-0. I stopped this at 4 because the Week 5 game for the Dallas Cowboys is on Sunday Night Football again on the road against the San Francisco 49ers. So for that matter, David Howman, will the Cowboys be 5-0 after that game?
Well, they
Chris,
really,
we know your answer.
They stole my thunder because I was gonna say false because they're gonna start 5-0. I feel real confident about this team. In my I had an article right before the season started where I went through and predicted every single game on the Cowboys schedule. And I originally had them starting out 4-1 with that one loss being to the Jets, really just chalking it up to the fact of like, it's Aaron Rodgers.
Was that Howman or me that cut out?
His internet's not 5-0.
It's Howman.
I always think it's me, so I move my body.
Yeah, like
around.
that's why I asked. We'll give him a second and hope that it stabilizes. Oh, there he is.
There we
Howman.
go. There we go. I'm just keeping you guys in suspense.
That's fair.
But yeah, I mean, now it's Zach Wilson. I feel confident about the Jets. I feel confident about all the teams on their next few weeks. I think we're going to learn a lot about the Cowboys in each of these games because the Jets, they're kind of falling into that trap team situation now because of losing Rodgers. The Cardinals, we just saw against the Commanders, they didn't get completely run out of the building. Granted, it's the Commanders, but you also consider if it's in Phoenix. I mean, we all saw the Super Bowl and the grass situation there, and weird stuff happens in that stadium all the time, especially when the Cowboys play there. And then the Patriots, Bill Belichick is, one of the toughest coaches to beat. And it's always a tough time against his team. And they almost did it against the Eagles in Week 1. So I think each one of those is going to really tell us a lot about this team's resolve and what they can do to overcome adversity when they face it in a game.
Okay. You guys are really killing it tonight. You're having your own 40-0 games kind of in parallel with one another. The score at this point, Chris 48, Tony 47, Howman 45, very, very, very tight. And if you are a member of the live audience, you impact this. I'm offering really nothing here except sitting here and looking pretty. But these gentlemen, they're the ones giving all the takes. You're offering the points. So we'll see how that goes over the course of our last topic. Yes, this is our last topic because It's a meaty one. This is the turducken of topics. It's 3 questions baked into one. We will go in our current standings order, which means we're going to go Chris, Tony, Howman. It just worked out that is also clockwise formation here. So Chris, is there anything that you have to see on Sunday? Could be anything, like any kind of measurement that you want to see from the Cowboys, whatever. You can define that however you'd like. If so, what? So if there's nothing, that kind of ruins the question. So I'm hopeful that you all have an answer. And if it is something, why? Why do you have to see that thing? So what do you have to see the Cowboys accomplish on Sunday? What is that thing? And why are you saying that? Oh, also, none of you can repeat answers. So sorry, Tony. Sorry, Howman.
Well, I mean, I was going to say first, the easy answer is I have to see a win, and why? For my mental health. But secondly, I would say that what I really want to see is more work from the tight ends, because I felt like the tight ends were kind of
actual work from the tight ends, like productive work,
like
right?
actual productive work from the tight ends, because it seemed like they were kind of, like they weren't that impressive. Like I feel like we're also hyped about Jake Ferguson coming into the season, and he had a lot of drops. And Dak's prettiest throw of the night really came to that a Peyton Hendershot, his little end zone drop that he had. Like, that was a beautiful ball. He placed it right in between 2 Giants defenders, put it right on the money. I mean, you can't ask for more from Dak in that position. And Dak is a guy who's shown throughout his career that he really likes his tight ends. And if this offense really wants to take that next step and really be as good on offense as they are on defense, we need more work from the tight ends. And I just feel like that was really it. It's hard to pick what went wrong in a 40-0 win, because at that point almost everything's going right. But one of the things that kind of felt a little disappointing was the work that we saw from the tight ends. So I would say I would like them to be better.
Yeah, Tony Pollard had the 2 touchdowns, both down near the goal line, which, remember when everybody's like, what's going to happen? How are the Cowboys going to score from the goal line without Zeke Elliott? It's going to be impossible. But those could have very easily been Dak Prescott touchdowns to the aforementioned tight ends. That's a good answer, Chris. Kevin agrees, says +5, tight ends are not great. RJ, though, was warning us all offseason. Hey, maybe Kevin gets some points here tonight. I kind of like that answer. Ethan says 100. Dak was robbed of a touchdown. Charles says time for Schoon. It would be hilarious if Luke Schoonmaker scored a touchdown or was the first tight end to score one for the Cowboys, given how much everybody hates him.
Can I just say something real quick?
No,
okay.
What? Yeah, you can.
All right. I was going to say, I think that if we see more struggle from this tight end position, I think Jerry Jones is going to get intrigued and interested in Kyle Pitts. And I think that that's something we should pound the table for. That's all I'm saying.
I saw you mention this and post about this and everything. This is your new DeAndre Hopkins. You know what I mean? Like you've got to have something. You know what I mean?
Got to have something fun to play with. I need a new toy in this offense. Kyle Pitts would be amazing in this Dallas Cowboys offense. He's so underutilized in Atlanta. He's not even touched his ceiling and potential. Bring Kyle Pitts in here. Our offense is just as unstoppable as the defense. And I'm sure the Falcons would be interested in moving him for kind of maybe a 2nd or 3rd round pick, maybe at this point, the way he's not been producing. If it costs more, I think that this 32nd pick, I'm not that worried about it if we can get a generational talent at the tight end position.
See, while we're talking about this, I just got to toot my own horn. Because we're talking about tight ends, and I was the one all offseason saying, go out and get Dalton Kincaid, get Luke Musgrave, get Sam Laporta, and y'all are saying, "Oh no, we got Jake Ferguson, we got Peyton Hendershot." Like, those guys are.
I was with you, Howman.
One prediction, yeah, no, RJ always on the spot, always smart. He knows ball. But Tony had this one prediction where he said he's gonna have 50 touchdowns, 20,000 yards or something ridiculous like that. Guess what? He had drops. Hendershot had a drop.
I love the infighting that we're getting here.
Those rookie tight ends, though, week 1, they all look pretty good. They were doing work. So I'm just saying.
I think the 40-point win has blinded people to the fact that it was like torrential downpour. Every time the Giants touched the football, it looked like it was a bar of soap in the shower. So it was, I know the Cowboys didn't have much offense to make mistakes, but the Giants couldn't hold on to the football. It was sloppy. It was messy. Yes, it was a 40-point. That's the weather to me, and how the Cowboys responded to win the way they did is more of a credit to me for that. Because it was actually nuts at times.
Thanks, Chris, for sending us down the Kyle Pitts rabbit hole.
Of course.
You know what you are with these specific kind of takes of yours? You're like somebody who doesn't ever do laundry. You know what I mean? You're just like, you just buy new clothes. You know what I mean? Like, that's all you do. So
My
it's like,
laundry is piling up right now.
yeah, it's like DeAndre Hopkins, Kyle
show.
Pitts, you know, like that's just, you know, you're just looking for the next new thing.
I think I should get some points though for bringing on like a new topic of my own that got the chat talking.
You know, some would argue that you should be penalized for derailing us and taking us into a tangent. But I'm not going to do that.
I appreciate that.
I'm gentle. Tony Catalina, you are up, despite the fact that you just had to defend your honor. Howman came at you at the jugular, man, over this Jake Ferguson thing. But nevertheless, Tony, is there anything you have to see on Sunday? If so, what and why?
Yeah, I mentioned the weather, and that's part of kind of what my answer here is going to be about. Kevin gave me -2, no rain excuse. That's just not reality. Like, obviously, the weather affects football games. They play it outdoors, so that's nonsense to even say that.
They won't play outdoors on Sunday, so that's
they won't, and that's part of my answer. I'm glad you said that, RJ, a great host. So I think we were robbed of what, and I need to see what this Texas Coast and Dak Prescott looks like in this offense. We never really got a chance to see the offense get in rhythm, to kind of do some of the things that they've been talking and advertising about, some of these, you know, simpler routes, checks with the offensive line. Like, we never really saw the offense get into an actual opportunity to get into a rhythm. So I think this would be the first chance in a climate controlled situation at home with their own crowd. They can do their own count. They don't have to go silent, none of that stuff. They'll have a comfortable situation. I want to see what Mike McCarthy and Dak Prescott have been working on. And it's against a really, really good defense, like I've said a few times today. You know, if they can go out there and they can put up a damn good offensive performance, like, I'm not going to go Chris Halling 17-0 level with it, but like, if this offense can click with this defense and those two units can be top 5, like, they should be on everybody's like top 5 list. I know, RJ, you had them at number 1 and some people had us at 4, 7, 6, whatever. Like, there should be no questions about this team being a legitimate Super Bowl threat if the offense can match what the defense does.
Chris.
Oh, I was just saying number 1. I'm sorry. I wasn't raising my hand. He was
Okay,
talking about where you ranked them. I was just saying that they should be ranked 1. I'm sorry.
Okay, so now you've also thrown us into a state of confusion. Okay. Howman, if the Cowboys offense, because the reason these answers are interesting, and Tony's is a good one to kind of play this game with. Chris's was really specific. That doesn't make it poor, but Tony's is kind of general, right? Like, I need to see the offense play well because rain won't be a factor. So if the offense doesn't play well, Tony just said he had, the question is something you have to see. So if they don't play well, let's say they even win, then like, do we freak out? Do we panic? Do we say like, well, maybe they suck? Like, maybe they're not going 17-0. Maybe 15-2 is the floor here.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a little bit concerning if they come out and like, you know, everything's good and like they've got all their starters, no injuries, and the offense just like lays a dud. That would be concerning just because, again, you know, there won't be any rain. You know, Mike McCarthy even said the other day in his press conference, like, we canceled out a bunch of packages in our offense because of the rain. Like, the offense wasn't really, you know, running at full strength in terms of what they had, you know, on their menu. So if they did come out and play poor against the Jets, even though the Jets have a good defense, like, you know, there's definitely worse defenses to lay a dud against, but it would still be a little concerning because that's kind of, that was the trend that we saw with the Kellen Moore offense was, you know, hey, they're really good like 90% of the time, but then that 10% of the time when you go up against, you know, a Vic Fangio defense or, you know, the 49ers defense and you just can't get it done. That was, you know, to me, that was like one of the main reasons why McCarthy decided to take over is because he was saying, hey, I know how to do things. I know how to beat these really good defenses, even when they've got a bunch of talent. And then if they go up in the very first one they face, they don't perform well. You know, I've been bullish on McCarthy, you know, all off season, but if that's what happened and like that was the result we got, that would make me a little nervous.
I took the question off the screen because you brought up a tangent that we should explore. That's why this question was going to take up so much time because I knew it was too meaty. You guys were going to take different pieces of it and we had to go different directions. I'm glad to see that no Cowboys fan was like taking a victory lap over Kellen Moore, which would be difficult to do given that the Chargers offense looked incredible. But Howman, you brought up Vic Fangio. I don't know if that was purposeful or not, given that the Chargers lost to the Dolphins, and obviously Vic Fangio's there. I brought up the Broncos game that the Cowboys lost 2 years ago, a little while ago. Vic Fangio kind of pounded his chest after that win. It was like, hey, this offense sucks. Like, I own them, basically. That sounds like I'm exaggerating. That was kind of what he said. But that being said, Chris, Danny Phantom had a great point in an article this week at Blog of the Boys about how Mike McCarthy kind of did what he said he was going to do. Everybody took his comment over the offseason, not the run the damn ball one, but what he said about, I've been where Kellen Moore has been. He just wants to light up the scoreboard, blah, 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 blah. I'm paraphrasing now, but he said, I want to be more balanced. Like there's different things you have to consider, et cetera, et cetera. Mike McCarthy did that. Like he executed that really flawlessly. And I think it was kind of proof of concept that you can't just be chasing points all the time. You have to play a balanced football game. And I'm not pointing fingers at Kellen Moore, but he did chase points and they put him up, but it wasn't enough for the Chargers in that particular instance against a great Dolphins team. But does any of that make sense to you, Chris Halling?
It makes a ton of sense. And, I'm not going to point fingers necessarily at Kellen Moore either, but I mean, at the same time, I think Mike McCarthy called the perfect game because he didn't put Dak in a position to turn the ball over and change the momentum back in the Giants' favor. It seemed like Dak was extremely confident the whole game, and he felt very comfortable in the offense. It seemed like everyone was really comfortable in the offense. There wasn't a lot of miscues. There wasn't a lot of people not knowing where to go, what to do. I love that he got Turpin involved a little bit in the receiving game, so that we can see his skill set in open space more than just on a return. And he did have a good balance of run versus the pass, in my opinion. So I think Mike McCarthy is going to have a heck of a season as our offensive coordinator, and I think he understands what it takes to win, football games. I mean, you're able to see that throughout his record in Dallas so far and what he did with Green Bay. He knows what he's doing, and I think that when you have a defense that's so good like this, the only thing that can hurt you is yourself, and that's by giving the opposing team short field and giving them momentum closer to our end zone. So if we can just continue to not make mistakes and be confident on the offensive side of the ball and just take care of it, then I think everything else will fall into place and the Cowboys will be really successful this season.
Tony, I'll come to you shortly, but Howman, you and I, we've always kind of had McCarthy belief as a common denominator. And I do think that there is, I don't want to call it a maturity because it sounds like we're saying Kellen Moore is immature, but there's a level of experience that is kind of necessary. You have to have, failed at so many things throughout the course of your career to kind of know what works and what doesn't in given situations.
Right. And that's one of the things that kind of is weirdly kind of a disadvantage of how Kellen Moore was pretty much great right from the beginning as an offensive coordinator. I mean, his very first year, they led the league in scoring and yards, and they were like number 2 in offensive DVOA. I mean, he just from the start, he hit the ground running. But then, when you start out so great, then it's like, oh, okay, well, this works, so I'm never going to go away from this. Then when you run into a problem where it doesn't work, then it's like, okay, well, maybe it was just a bad game, or, there's not really a whole lot of room for introspection, not really a whole lot of like incorporating new ideas or tweaking things. And ironically, that's kind of where McCarthy was at when he got fired in Green Bay. And of course, he had that whole where he took a year off, but he really didn't. And he was, spent time watching film, studying league trends and kind of tweaking his offense. And now we're getting to see some of that with the Texas Coast offense. But I think there is a lot of value in someone who's, not only called plays for a very long time in his career, but just been around football for so long. And he's seen so many just changes in the way that offense is played, the way that, trends come and go and how quarterback play has evolved and things like that. And he just sees things just inherently from a different view because of his experience. And that's what, that was kind of the appeal of why the Cowboys hired him as head coach in the first place was, Jason Garrett was the interim head coach and then the guy that was kind of rebuilding on the fly, learning the head coaching duties on the fly. And they were like, well, McCarthy's been here, he's done that. And as a play caller, it's the same deal. He's been here, he's done that. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to balance being the play caller, being the head coach, managing the clock, managing all the administrative stuff, day to day throughout the week. He knows how to do this, and that's what we saw in week 1 was just he's comfortable, and it's like riding a bike, and you don't forget how to do it even if you don't do it for a few years. And he just looked like a natural and a pro.
Tony, I wanted to save you for last year because the chat's talking a little bit about Cavante Turpin. Ethan says, I never expected anything from Turpin. Pleasant surprise. PA's boy says, put some respect on Turpin's name. I saw you tweet earlier today about the interview that you and Aiden did with Turpin in the week leading up to the Super Bowl, where he boasted about wanting to be used on offense. He obviously scored on Sunday. But this is, I think, a great point of what Howman's saying is like, it wouldn't shock me if Turpin doesn't touch the ball once on Sunday. That the McCarthy isn't about like, okay, like this worked, turn on the fire hose and just like let it be on forever. Like Mike McCarthy understands there are rhythms, there are routines, there are sequences, there are a lot of things that you have to manage. Cavante Turpin worked on Sunday against the Giants. He might work on Sunday against the Jets, but that doesn't mean you just pound it all season long and now he's a permanent staple of your offense to that degree.
Absolutely. I mean, if we're talking about what it could be, it could be Tolbert in week 2. That's the good thing about this offense is we really hadn't seen, I think it was whoever just mentioned, they took some things out of the game plan due to the weather. Like, we didn't really get to see what they've been working on. And I think that's why it's something I need to see. It's more of a want, but I would love to see this offense really develop, and using Turpin like they did is just a little bit of it, and how they're going to be able to use Brandon Cooks in a different way. And CeeDee Lamb seems like doesn't matter what's going to happen, he's going to get his touches, and Tony Pollard looks like he's going to round into form and be himself. And, what we were really robbed of, because of some tight end drops and because of the elements like Dak Prescott, like Chris said, Dak put some balls on the tight end that were like, this is a good throw. This should have been a touchdown. Like, we were robbed of some, who cares, statistical stuff because of how the game went down. But Mike McCarthy, I think you mentioned to RJ a couple minutes ago, it's not going to be about let's hang 40, let's hang 50.
Right.
It's got to be about the efficiency, and winning a game cleanly 27-10, well, in my mind, is just as good as winning 40-0. If this offense goes out there and plays clean, protects the football, understands time of possession, understands play sequence, call sequences, like, we're going to be fine. And I think that is what we're really going to get to see week 2, and we'll be able to have a more clear picture heading into week 3 against the Arizona Cardinals because of it.
The Cowboys finished week 1 9th in offensive DVOA. So I know that it didn't feel like they did a lot, but they were remarkably used the word efficient, Tony. Howman, they were 6th in offensive EPA before Monday night. I can't imagine that changed. So again, you're talking about a top 10 offense by 2 very efficient measurements. So everybody should kind of calm down, even, Chris, who's hating all over the tight ends. All right, Howman, take us home. Is there anything you have to see on Sunday? If so, what and why?
I think what I have to see on Sunday is a repeat performance of what they had on Sunday night. And by that, I mean, not necessarily 40-0 all over again, but I mean, you're talking about a Jets team that, yes, they are probably pound for pound, they're a better team than the Jets or than the Giants were, just how they built this team after they got Aaron Rodgers. But this is also a team that just had a major blow, losing Rodgers for the year after that was kind of the move in the offseason. They've just lost a lot of confidence, even though they're, Robert Saleh said, I don't get why people are, writing obituaries for us yet. And we're all just kind of like, do you really not? Like, we all know why. But I mean, they're coming off, they have one less day of prep to get ready for the Cowboys than the Cowboys have for them. They're going on the road. And this is just one of those teams, like we talked about at the beginning, like, could it actually be a trap game? And it's one of those ones where now with the change at quarterback, this is a team that the Cowboys should handle just like they did the Giants. And yes, it's a better defense. Yes, they have some better weapons on offense, but at the same time, with the situation that the Jets are in right now, this is a team that they should beat easily. They should beat thoroughly. And I want to see them not just come out and like get the win, but I want to see them come out with the same level of intensity, the same level of execution, if not better, when we're talking about, some of the drops or the missed extra point from Brandon Aubrey when he first went out there. I want to see them keep that same level of energy and just play the same way. It doesn't have to be 40-0, but I want it to be that kind of game, because to me, that's going to tell me that this team is locked in. It wasn't just getting ready for that first week. They're keeping it locked in going all through the year.
Okay. This was really good. This was a really good question. I think you all did very, very well for yourselves. Great roundtable performance in a lot of different ways, especially adjusting to not really having any prep. Shout out to me, and adjusting to the tangents that each of you sent us on. But there can only be one winner, and I'm very excited about this because there were 2 3-game winning streaks that we came in riding. Chris, yours a bit kind of different. Tony, yours literally consecutive back to back to back. But tonight they both end. David Howman is our winner with a C note, 100 points. Chris, Tony tying at 99. That wasn't, manipulation or, me making it look dramatic. That's exactly how it happened. You both had exactly 99 points. It's just the way the game came out. So Howman, how do you feel not only hitting triple digits, but getting the win and putting an end to 2 different 3-game winning streaks?
Yeah, I mean, in a way, it's kind of like the Cowboys getting the full Sinatra going New York, New York to start the year. So
well done.
I think hopefully that's some really nice foreshadowing for the Cowboys. And, it's very, it's a real honor being able to get the win over 2 guys who have really had a tradition of excellence in their last few appearances here. So I tip my hat to both of you.
Chris, I'm coming to you before Tony because you wanted this. I mean, you called it. You said you signed up last week. It was literally 1 week ago at this moment. You said, I'm coming for Tony. So do you feel some pride for at least tying Tony? Or do you feel like you didn't even beat Tony? You didn't even do what you wanted to do in that sense?
I don't take any pride on tying. I don't believe in that. That's why I don't even love watching regular season soccer, RJ, because I don't think that there should be ties, and that happens. But here's the thing: I don't take pride in tying with Tony, but I do give props and congratulations to David. He's my co-host, and it's almost like if I was gonna lose that streak to anyone, I'd want it to be my co-host on the Writers Block. I'll throw him the little lob like we're LeBron and Dwayne Wade out here.
That's a sensitive thing with Dallas fans. You can't really bring up. Yeah,
I'll throw him the lob like Steve Nash threw to Dirk if he ever did.
There we go.
But there it is. So I'm excited for Howman and congrats. And he's a great guy. And Tony did great as well. There's no hate towards Tony. Tony did great. I was just talking some mess. Because it's just fun and games. But at the end of the day, we're all on the same team. We all love the Cowboys, and we're all gonna have a good season watching all these wins, all these 17 wins.
Tony, Justin says BTB has better depth than the Cowboys when we got 2 3-peats losing. That's a great way to kind of spin this. Tony, look, you didn't win 4 in a row. What a horrible thing. I mean, you know what I mean? Like it's hard to be upset about 3 in a row.
Yeah, I'm gonna tuck my tail. Like I'm upset. I wanted that 4-peat, so it's all right. I lost a well-deserved guy there. So you win some, you lose some.
I know you both have expressed some adoration for Howman, but the vibes are too positive. I really need some dissension here. This is Kevin's idea. It says a tie-break question for second place. So Howman, a quick hitting question that as the winner, you get to offer to Tony and Chris, and then grade their answers and tell us who gets second and who gets third.
Oh man, put me on the spot.
That's what winners have to do, Howman. This is the victory parade. You're going to Disneyland. You got to shake hands, kiss babies, do everything.
All right, so just coming off the top of my head. So the Cowboys looked great Sunday night playing and demolishing the Giants. Has this changed your mind about whether or not this team can break through, go to the NFC Championship game and beyond? If not, either way, why hasn't it changed your mind? Why has it? Start with Chris.
All right. It didn't change my mind because I thought we were making the Super Bowl regardless, but it definitely reinforced my positive belief that I had in the team. I mean, I've been saying all offseason that this Cowboys team is going to be the best defense that I've seen in my life. I think by the time the season's over, they'll be in the same discussion, if not better, than the old defense that Dan Quinn coached in Seattle, that Legion of Boom team. Because listen, hear me out. I drafted the Cowboys defense so high in fantasy.
Oh my
and
God.
They saved me. They got me 40 points. I've never seen that in my life. They had the second most points all in fantasy behind Tyreek Hill, and he went crazy. So I'm a big believer this defense has what it takes to bring this offense to the Super Bowl, and we have a good offensive supporting cast around Dak. Dak is a good quarterback. We have a better play calling situation this year. There's no reason not to be excited and not to be happy. If it doesn't happen this year, I'll never have hope again because it has to happen this year. I'm telling you, if it doesn't happen this year, I don't know when it will happen. The NFC is wide open. It's time. If it doesn't happen this time, RJ, I'm coming into next season with all types of doom and gloom. I'm just not going to
tell.
Huh? So it has to. This is the year. I feel it in my veins. I'm putting money on it. I'm putting my first apartment's rent paycheck on Cowboys Super Bowl. It's going to happen. Let's get
it. Tony, good luck topping that.
Yeah, I might as well just take third place now with that answer. But no, but I will say it didn't hurt me, right? It didn't hurt my feelings, right? But I looked at different ways this game could have went. And as I'm thinking about it, I'm an overanalyzer. I didn't have 40-0 on my bingo card. I'm sorry. I just didn't have it. Like, it wasn't something I thought was going to happen. And a real quick story. We're sitting in the stadium. It's pouring, raining. They just went up 33-0. And my wife looked at me and goes, Rachel goes, I kind of feel bad for cheering at this point. Like, all the Giants fans are miserable. It's pouring, raining. And I'm like, no, this is what we sign up for. Like, this is when you start the Let's Go Cowboys chant. So this is
twist the knife, respect.
Right. So like for me, I'm like, I'm not this is good. We're living the good life here. But no, I will say, and I'll add one other piece to that. 40-0 against the Giants is one thing. If they go out there and put up a similar type performance next week against the Jets, I think the rest of the league is going to be really afraid. So to answer the question directly, it helped it, but next week could really put me on some Chris Halling type hopium if this goes crazy like that.
Howman, the time has come for you to tell us who won second and who won third place, but I did just want to share, Kevin, you missed it, had a suggestion for the question you should have asked him. He said to ask them why Leighton Vander Esch is awesome. That would have been really great.
Well, that one, that goes unsaid. I mean, anyone with eyes can see that he's one of the best ever to do it.
Howman, who won second place? Hand out the silver medal, please.
It was great answers from both of you. I've got to give Chris the edge just because he, with the commitment at the end, saying like just going all in on this season. Like, I don't know if it'll work out for you, buddy, but I respect it.
It would have been a really awkward Rodgers block episode next week if you hadn't given me the second place. So I would have felt betrayed.
If they don't win, it looks like Chris will be homeless. So they need to win. He's putting his own rent check on.
Well, he said he was putting his first month's rent. You know what I mean? Okay. So he could get like a late notice. The weird thing
2 months behind.
I am relatively closer to you, Tony, so I may just have to, stop by your place and crash there. Maybe we can do the roundtable from the same screen.
The thing that I thought was interesting, you said, Chris, was that you felt it in your veins. I've always heard the expression to be in your loins, not your veins. In my veins. Well, that's a weird thing.
They're vibrating right now. I'm ready.
Okay. Congratulations, Chris. You called your shot. You said you were coming for Tony. I know you just made nice, but you beat him. You're higher on the podium than he is.
As a great man named Ricky Bobby said, if you ain't first, you're last. So I can only take it with so much pride, but I am happy to see that he's a little lower than me.
Tony?
When you come for the king, you best not miss. So he didn't miss today.
Did he?
He beat me, so hey, what can I do?
I guess that's true. This was a great way to end. So that actually, I mentioned this on the NFC East mixtape that will come out tomorrow. I watched Pulp Fiction for the first time ever over the weekend, so I understand all the references now.
Great movie.
Howman, because Tony can't, as the winner, please tell us a movie that we should all watch before Sunday's Dallas Cowboys game. It can be a classic, it can be a stinker, it could be new, it can be old. It can't be Oppenheimer because I know you've seen it like 14 times. So what is a movie that we should all watch? Something that is streamable, accessible on some sort of streaming platform.
Gosh, I don't know about streamable.
Okay, well, I won't hold you to anything if it's not.
Actually, The Nice Guys on Netflix. Ryan Gosling, Russell Crowe.
Good movie. We need a sequel to that one.
It's a retro style, like detective murder mystery comedy. Great movie. Very fun.
Have you seen it, Tony?
Of course not.